My dear brothers, in today's gospel, Jesus begins to explain to the people what the kingdom of heaven is like, and he does so through parables. But at the end of the gospel, there's a very interesting verse that allows us to penetrate even more deeply into what is happening. The gospel tells us that Jesus taught these things to the people in parables, but to the disciples, he explained everything privately, in intimacy. See, this is something that still happens to us today. We need to understand that if we do not have an intimate life with Christ, we will never deeply understand divine revelation. Saint Thomas Aquinas reminds us that there is one God who reveals himself, but in two ways. He reveals himself externally, in history, and also internally, through the supernatural light of grace. God speaks externally, yes. He speaks through Christ, he speaks through events, and in the gospel he speaks through parables. But for this truth to be truly seen, for us to perceive it with a true act of faith, it is necessary that God speak to us from within. The voice of Christ echoes in external revelation, but it must also resound in internal revelation. And what does this mean for our practical life? Very concretely, you need to have a spiritual life. It is not enough merely to hear Christ speaking in parables and historical events. You must encounter him in intimacy, so that he may enlighten you from within with the supernatural light of faith. And how does this happen in practice? You take a truth of the faith that you already know, something learned from the catechism, a passage of sacred scripture, a spiritual book such as The Imitation of Christ or Introduction to the Devout Life, and you withdraw into prayer. You linger over that word, and, allow me the expression, you must dig around that truth. You must chew on that bone, meditating, persevering, asking Christ to enlighten you so that you may see that truth from within. This is an experience that is necessary for all Christians. It is not reserved only for great mystics or a spiritual elite. We need to understand this. Knowledge of God through faith is an experiential knowledge. When I say experiential, I am not speaking of sensory experiences, feelings, chills, or emotions. That is not what I mean. I am speaking of something that happens in the soul, something that may not even be accompanied by sensible consolations, but that deeply enlightens the interior. It is when you are there, praying over a truth, a mystery of the faith, and what you have always known suddenly becomes clear. Now I understand. If someone asks you, "But what changed? Didn't you already know this before?" you will answer, "I knew it, but now I know." Before, you knew it conceptually. Now you know it through an experience of faith. An interior light has been lit within you. Jesus spoke in parables, but he also spoke in intimacy. May he also speak in your intimacy. God bless you.